Ms. Méndez Dardón.
Thank you so much, Chair Man McGovern and Congresswoman Omar. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on a matter of urgent and growing concern, the repression of civil society through anti-NGO legislation. As a Central American woman, I speak today on behalf of countless individuals, organizations, and communities across two Central American countries, Nicaragua and El Salvador, where authoritarian-leaning governments and institutions are systematically dismantling civic space. The implementation of anti-NGO laws in these countries, and indeed globally, is not happening in isolation. Rather, it reflects a broader, coordinated, and accelerating trend that threatens human rights, particularly freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. Despite country-specific differences, a common trend is clear: the rapid closing of civic space through legal repression. Let me begin with Nicaragua, where since 2018, the Ortega regime has weaponized the law to dismantle civil society. Over 5,000 NGOs out of 7,000 legally registered in the country have been shut down without due process, many of them providing humanitarian aid. This means that at least 75% of the legally registered NGOs were shut down in Nicaragua. The 2020 Foreign Agents Law requires organizations receiving foreign funding to register with the government. Together with the special cybercrimes law and broad anti-terrorism statutes, it enables the arbitrary detention and prosecution of civil society leaders. Authorities have also confiscated properties, revoked citizenships, and forced many leaders into exile or prison. This is not just a bureaucratic overreach. This is a deliberate strategy to erase independent voices and cut off communities from vital support, as even universities and religious leaders have been repressed. Now turning to El Salvador, President Bukele is advancing a very similar agenda. In May 2025, the Legislative Assembly passed a foreign agents law that closely mirrors Nicaragua's. It imposes a 30% tax on international funds and gives the government sweeping powers to suspend or dissolve organizations accused of interfering in undefined internal affairs or public order. While Bukele government justifies this law as a tool for transparency and sovereignty, it is in reality an effort aimed at silencing critical voices. At least 8,000 NGOs will be impacted, many of whom are already navigating the recent loss of US funding. Organizations denouncing corruption, human rights abuses, and independent journalism are the most affected. They have faced surveillance, harassment, forced relocation, and exile. Since May alone, at least 47 independent journalists, 33 human rights defenders, and other critical voices have been forced to flee the country, an exodus on a scale not seen since the Civil War. In parallel, El Salvador is increasingly using arbitrary detention. Human rights defenders such as Ruth Lopez have been jailed without evidence or formal charges simply for speaking out against the government. Lastly, although the situation in Guatemala is different, it deserves mention. A 2020 NGO laws grants the government broad powers to suspend groups it deems disruptive and tighten control over civil society. Although President Arevalo has pledged to restore democratic norms, he faces relentless obstruction from a corrupt judicial apparatus, which has targeted critical voices, forcing many into exile or prison, including journalist Jose Ruben Zamora and indigenous leader Luis Pacheco. Although President Arevalo has not used the law against civil society, it remains on the books. If not reformed, it could be reactivated by future governments to suppress civil actors. While the legal infrastructure for repression already in place, the message is clear. Even with a democratic president in office, authoritarian tendencies can persist when institutions remain captured. While transparency and adherence to legal standards are essential for NGOs, attacks on civil society are also attacks on democracy itself. Let me close with some recommendations for Congress. First, speak out in defense of civil society organizations that are being unjustly impacted by anti-NGO legislation. Second, tie U.S. foreign assistance to these governments to clear human rights benchmarks, including the reversal of repressive laws. Third, increase U.S. foreign assistance to provide direct support to civil society, including those operating in exile. Fourth, make use of individual sanctions against officials responsible for violence and prosecution against critical voices. Civil society organizations are not just institutions. They support local communities, promote civic engagement, and hold governments accountable. Without a vibrant, protected civic space, no democracy can survive. Thank you, and I look forward for your questions.